Subscribe to Sinister Shadow Studio. The past in the walls, I've always been a skeptic. When friends would whisper about the haunted alley behind the old church or the ghostly figure seen on the abandoned railway tracks, I'd scoff and change the subject. So, when my realtor told me the old mansion on Waverly Street was rumored to be haunted, I just chuckled. "It's an old house," I said, dismissing the superstition. "Creaky floors and wind through the eaves will always spawn ghost stories." The house was magnificent, an architectural marvel of the late 1800s, complete with towering spires, ornate woodwork, and sprawling grounds. I was enchanted, and the price was absurdly low for its grandeur. I bought it without hesitation. My first night was uneventful. I was surrounded by boxes and the comforting scent of old books. The mansion had a vast library that the previous owner had left untouched. But the second night, something changed. I was lying in bed when I heard a faint voice, like a woman singing a lullaby. I got up and followed the sound, which seemed to be coming from the library. The doors creaked open to reveal a room bathed in an otherworldly light. There, amidst the dusty shelves, was a woman dressed in clothing from another era. She was singing to a child in her arms. Startled, I called out, "Who are you?" But my voice seemed muted, distant. The woman looked up, her eyes pools of sorrow. "Help me," she whispered before fading away, leaving the room in darkness. Sleep eluded me that night. The next morning, with coffee in hand, I visited the town's historical society, hoping to uncover any tragedies tied to my new home. The archivist, an elderly woman named Miss Evelyn, looked up the house on Waverly Street. "Ah," she said with a shiver, "the Larkins' residence." The mansion had been home to Amelia Larkin and her young son, Henry. They had lived there during the late 1800s. The father had left them, and distraught, Amelia would sing lullabies to comfort Henry each night. But tragedy struck when Henry fell ill and died. Heartbroken, Amelia was said to wander the house, singing to her lost child. A few weeks later, she was found dead in the library, a victim of her overwhelming grief. Miss Evelyn leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They say she's still there, singing to Henry. The mansion has had many owners, but none stay long. They all hear her." I left the society, my skepticism waning. That evening, the singing began again. I felt an irresistible pull toward the library. This time, when I entered, the scene was different. The room was filled with people from Amelia's era, dancing and laughing. Amelia stood by a window, her eyes scanning the room. "Where is he?" she murmured, desperation edging her voice. Suddenly the room shifted, the revelry replaced by the sight of Amelia cradling her sick child, tears streaming down her face. I reached out, wanting to comfort her, but my hand passed through her. "Amelia," I whispered, "your pain is keeping you here. You need to let go." She looked up, the room darkening as her grief intensified. The weight of it pressed down on me, choking off my air. "I can't," she sobbed. "I can't leave him." Struggling to breathe, an idea struck me. "Sing," I gasped. "Sing your lullaby, but let it be a song of release, not sorrow." Tears streaming down her face, Amelia began to sing. The oppressive darkness lifted. As she sang, a light appeared, with the silhouette of a small boy beckoning to her. "Mother," he whispered, his voice full of love. With a final tearful glance at me, Amelia joined her son, and they faded away, leaving me alone in the silent library. The next day, the house felt lighter, the air fresher. I knew Amelia and Henry had found their peace. Word spread through the town that the haunting of the Waverly Street mansion had ended. But I knew better. The house was not devoid of spirits, it was filled with them. Memories of laughter, joy, and love echoed through its walls, reminding me that while the past should be respected, it need not be feared. For in the end, even the most tormented souls seek only understanding and release. And sometimes they just need someone to listen to. Echoes of Fairbrook Manor. The allure of Fairbrook Manor was undeniable. Towering over the moors, its stone walls and intricate ironwork had persisted through centuries. I had long dreamt of owning such a relic, so when it became available at an unbelievable price, I couldn't resist. My first night was peaceful. The gentle sighs of the old manor were comforting rather than eerie. However, it was on the second night that the past began to seep through. The old grandfather clock in the hall began to chime at precisely 3:03 a.m. Not 3 o'clock or 4, but 3:03. Then, I heard it. Footsteps on the grand staircase. Slow, deliberate steps descending, echoing through the corridors of the house. Curiosity overpowering my fear, I lit a candle and opened my bedroom door. The footsteps halted momentarily before resuming their descent. Following the sound, I reached the main hall. There, by the dim light of my candle, stood a figure. It was a woman, clad in a gown from a bygone era, holding a letter. She looked up, and our eyes met. Hers were deep pools of sadness, but also hope. She gestured to the letter, then pointed to the fireplace. I approached cautiously and placed the letter into the flames. As it burned, the woman's form wavered, her lips forming silent words. "Thank you," she whispered, fading away with the last ember. I researched Fairbrook's history the next day. As it turned out, the manor once belonged to a lady named Eleanor Fairbrook. The records revealed that she had been courted by a young man from a neighboring town. They exchanged letters filled with dreams and promises. However, Eleanor's father disapproved of the match and forced her into a marriage with a more affluent suitor. In her despair, Eleanor threw herself from the top of the staircase at 3:03 a.m., the exact time she received her lover's last letter. Local legends spoke of her spirit wandering the manor, forever tied to that final message. By burning the letter, I had released Eleanor from her earthly bond. The atmosphere in the manor transformed. Rooms felt warmer, the air lighter. No longer did the clock chime at 3:03, nor did footsteps echo on the staircase. Months turned into years, and Fairbrook Manor became a haven for me. Yet every year, on the anniversary of my encounter with Eleanor, a single letter would appear on the grand staircase, blank but sealed with an intricate E. It was a gentle reminder that while the past might be unchangeable, its echoes can be hushed by understanding, compassion, and a willingness to engage with the mysteries it presents. Whispers of Willow Way. When I first laid eyes on the house at Willow Way, it was the garden that won me over. Amidst a riot of flowers and vines, an ancient willow stood, its boughs gracefully touching the ground, creating a secluded hideaway beneath. It felt like the secret sanctuaries I'd dreamt of as a child. The house itself, though aged, had good bones. With a fresh coat of paint and some tender care, I knew it would shine. The first week was a whirlwind of renovations. Fresh paint, repaired floors, and hours spent in the garden brought the house back to life. But it was during the second week that things took a curious turn. Every night, I'd hear whispering voices. At first, I brushed them off as the wind through the trees or the chatter of nocturnal animals. But one fateful evening, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to follow the whispers. They led me to the old willow. Beneath its drooping branches, I found a small, weathered diary. It belonged to a girl named Clara who lived in the house during the early 1900s. Through her entries, I learned of Clara's secret romance with a boy named Tom. Their families disapproved, so they used the willow as their meeting spot. They planned to run away together, but the last entry was a heart-wrenching note of despair. Tom never showed. Night after night, I would sit beneath the willow, reading Clara's diary by the soft glow of a lantern. One evening, as I reached the last page, I felt a sudden drop in temperature. Looking up, I found myself surrounded by a faint silvery mist. Before me stood Clara, her eyes searching the horizon. "He promised," she whispered, tears streaming down her ethereal face. I hesitated for a moment before replying. "I think he tried, Clara." From the diary, I'd gathered snippets of local events. Piecing together the timelines, I recalled a mention of a young man who died in a mining accident shortly before Clara's last entry. I approached her slowly. "Sometimes Circumstances beyond our control keep promises from being kept. I believe Tom wanted to be with you, but fate had other plans. Clara's form wavered, her eyes locking onto mine. For a brief moment, I saw another figure materialize behind her, a young man with a familiar look of longing. "Tom?" she whispered. He nodded, reaching out for her. As their fingers touched, the air around them shimmered with a gentle golden light. They shared a tender moment before slowly fading away, leaving me alone beneath the ancient willow. From that night on, the whispers ceased. But every now and then, as twilight bathed the world in soft hues, I'd catch fleeting glimpses of two young lovers beneath the willow, a timeless testament to love's enduring promise. Subscribe to Sinister Shadow Studio